Welcome to What Happens Next, the channel dedicated to exploring challenges we all face in our 50s and 60s when we're thinking about the next chapter of our lives. And what we do on this channel is not only explore the financial, even though being financially prepared for the next chapter is often important, but also the other elements of our lives that are really important. Like, what's our purpose? How do we stay intellectually engaged with the world? What does our world of work look like? How do we stay physically engaged? And how important are social connections and community in our lives? And we're really lucky on What Happens Next to have some really great expert guests to join us on that journey. And today I am really pleased to be introducing Adrian Lomas. Adrian, how are you, mate?
I'm really good. Sorry, I thought you were going to say, and today we've broken the mold and got not an expert. I'll go with the expert bit.
Yeah, keep it, go for it. Now, this is a weird thing. I thought I knew you fairly well, but on doing the research, literally an hour ago for this interview, I realised that you've got a really interesting story about you throwing a bottle off a ship and it creating a relationship that lasted for 30 years. Can you tell everybody about that?
Well, lasted longer than that, to be fair, Chris. The bottle, yes, was thrown when I was about 9 or 10, something like that, coming from the Channel Islands, going back to England. And I just had this romantic thing about chucking a bottle in the sea with a letter in it. Must have read it or seen it on TV. But yeah, I did it. And then within about a week later, I got a letter. And a letter, this is going back now, oh my God, in the late, must be 1979, 1980, something like that, going back a bit. And yeah, I got a letter from a French girl, the same age as me, a girl called Emmanuelle. I was sort of into cycling. Her dad was a cyclist and she got brothers and sisters, and she found the bottle on the beach in Cherbourg. And so, yeah, we started writing. Her English was better than my French, being fair about it. But yeah, we started writing. I tried to meet up at one stage when I was about 19 years old, when I went traveling to Tahiti. She was a nurse there at the time. We didn't meet. And then we just kept on writing throughout life, really. And we never met. We never had a phone call until I rode the Tour de France in 2013. I got the opportunity to ride the whole tour as an amateur. And as I was coming into Mont Saint-Michel the day before, she posted on my Facebook saying, "Oh, Adrian, I see you coming to Mont Saint-Michel. That's near to where I live. I'm going to come and meet you." And I'm like, oh my God, this is surreal. So I rode the stage, finished in Mont Saint-Michel, and then met Emmanuelle and her daughter at the finish line. And we were chatting like long lost friends, because we were, and then carried on relationship in a friendly way, and still now. I mean, last summer we spent a week with her family, my family, and her family together over at their place. So what, 40 odd years we've been good mates, really.
What did you write about over the years, and how did the relationship evolve and change?
Yeah, just random stuff about what I was doing as a kid in Stoke, where I was born and bred, and what she was doing in France, and what her brothers were doing, and sister, and all that sort of stuff,
family,
really. Family, and then work and stuff like that. So yeah, and we invited her to. I got married 2 years ago, and to someone I met on that tour as well, actually, while I was cycling. And yeah, she was invited to our wedding, and she was one of our guest speakers. And she at the speech, at the meal, she brought out the original letter.
That is amazing.
And read that out. So yeah, it was quite an emotional speech. Let's put it that way.
I told when I wrote the book I wrote a couple of years ago on kindness, I told a story about where I think I got the value of kindness from, and it was when I was about 7 or 8. And in my primary school, there was this bench, and this bench was where all the kids sat, who needed a friend. So I used to go over as a young kid and just make sure these kids were okay. And there was one day when they, at assembly, clearly it's what every 9-year-old wants, Adrian. At assembly one day, they presented me with a Chinese willow pattern plate. I wanted a Commodore 64, to be honest. I didn't want that. I didn't want this Chinese willow pattern plate. But I took it out to my mum, and the look on her face of pride, because the school had phoned her and let her know I was coming and stuff like that. And years later, actually, in the year she passed away, 2019, she kept the plate all that time.
Brilliant.
And she brought it out, and at the book launch, we had the plate on display, and nobody knew what it was. People were going, "Why is that weird plate there?" But then I told the story, and it's so fascinating to reminisce about that sort of stuff.
Brilliant, love it.
Anyway, we're not here to be nostalgic. We're here to talk about the next stage of our lives, and I'm really excited, particularly for our business owner viewers, to explore EOS and the impact it's had on your life. But before we do that, apart from knowing that you've had a pen pal relationship for quite a long time, tell us a little bit more about you.
Oh, well, yeah, me. Where do you start? I ran my own business I started it in the last century. In 1999 was when I started my creative design agency up in Cheshire. Graduated effectively from Stoke, crossed the M6 and then into the Cheshire countryside and started growing my business there. And yeah, it was good little business, helping clients like Chester Racecourse and British Cycling and stuff like that. And it was really enjoyed that general all-round agency feel that we created. But I guess, we grew over the years, and we got sort of quite famous for some good work, like Laura Ashley. We were doing all Laura Ashley's website at the time. We picked up Red Bull. So we were doing F1 and Toro Rosa and cliff diving and air race. And, we had some really, really, really good accounts, really, and a good team, and got investors and people to the gold standard, because very much about people and culture. That was so important to me, giving back to the people and giving them their opportunities, really. But yeah, it didn't always go well, being fair. 2013 was my a crap year, keeping it clean. It started with my mum passing away, which didn't set me up too well. Then went through a sort of a challenged and painful divorce, which is never good for anyone, especially when you've got a kid involved as well. And then I was told I was financially broke. I'd overtraded, so the business was running out of money, and I was. And so I literally ended up living underneath my desk for 3 months of my life, because I'd got nowhere else to go. I got no money, nothing, but I still got a business and, and all that sort of stuff to contend with. So yeah, really, really low patch, which was, it's hard to be, to figure out the right thing, what to do. But, at that stage, somebody gave me a copy of the book Traction, the EOS book by Gino Wickman. And yeah, I got plenty of time on my hands then, so I read it, and it was quite simplistic in many ways, but it made sense. There was a lot of real good foundational stuff in it, which I sort of knew a lot about, but wasn't always doing all the bits, just dabbling at it, if you like. So the rigor of actually putting that system in place into the business turned it around. We managed to Phoenix. So borrowed a big load of money from Funding Circle, dropped in on the Monday, paid everybody off on a Tuesday, and then with the new plan and focus, managed to trade out and got to the point in 2019 where we sold for a healthy sum. It was quite a journey, but over that 6 years, sort of coming out of the low point, worked hard at it, and yeah, got there, which was really nice. So yeah, it's been quite a journey to get to effectively where I am now, which is an EOS implementer. So I now help people to implement EOS into their business.
Just I imagine having that lived experience of it changes your perspective, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is something where, you know, I've not just read a book and now going out and teaching it, you know, which, you know, that's fine. But for me, yeah, I lived and breathed it. And so I get what it's like to own and run a business and to have the ups and downs and not know what to do for the best. So by effectively implementing EOS into it, that I think was one of the linchpins of the turnaround for us, you know?
Yeah. Well, help me understand a little bit about what goes through your head when you're at that low point, and how do you turn that around from just a motivation perspective? What was it, do you think, that made you think, right, I need to get this sorted out?
Yeah, I don't know if, you know, I'm sure other people have been in low points as well. You know, it's a horrible place, isn't it? You know, I mean, no, you can't sugarcoat it. It's not nice at all. So, because you sort of feel stuck. You're not sure, you know, what way to go. You don't feel like you've got many tools in your bag to help you, if you like. I mean, I don't know about others, but certainly me at that point, I wasn't really open about telling lots of people about it. So again, getting support from others was limited.
Yeah.
You know, I guess, what do you feel? I mean, for me, embarrassed. You know, it's like, here's me, quite a lucky guy in many ways, but now run out of luck and just like, oh shit, I just don't know what to do next. You know, it really was quite a low, embarrassing point. You sort of thinking, what can I do for money? You know, how can I get out of this position? You know, it is very, very painful and hard. So yeah, it's
tough.
Yeah, it is tough. Yeah. And, you know, look, I'm no different to many others that have gone through many more low patches. You know, I have been very lucky, but, you know, the turning point when I did figure it out as to, well, this is the best plan I can create at the moment. Let's give it a good go, was when it started to show signs of working. Then, yeah, it obviously became a little bit more liberating, you know.
How long did it take for you to see the signs of the implementation working well?
Well, I mean, it's hard to say for sure. I mean, this is going back now quite a few years, so you know, time does cloud it a little bit, if I'm honest about it. But, you know, from that point in 2013 of reading the book, and we've all read a book, right? And we've all sort of like, oh yeah, let's take some of that and we can do that. You know, there was me and my business partner at the time. We said, look, if we're going to do this, we should really just follow it as it is, as it says, and not try and create something. And we've spent years of being a creative agency and creating our own stuff, and that got us into a mess anyway. But so no, we just said, right, let's religiously follow the structure of this and just see where it takes you. And I think we noticed over time that just things started to click. You know, we got more focused on who we were. You know, what did we want to be and what did we not want to be? What clients did we want and what clients don't we want? You know, as opposed to just grabbing anything that came our way, which we can be prone to do at times. So just getting that laser sharp focus of the what we wanted, the market, the people, you know. I mean, we became a Salesforce commerce cloud. So without getting technical, we focused only on Salesforce commerce cloud projects, which is quite niche, but that niche pushed away any others, like any Magentos and WordPresses or whatever, any other sort of systems that were around there. We didn't do that work. We only did this very narrow piece.
Yeah, but you get really good at that bit, don't you? That's the thing. Yeah,
that was it. It was definitely about how can we be the best we can as a team, which helped us then, because we then were going into Salesforce Towers every week, and they were like, okay, well, these guys only do our platform so we can trust them.
Yeah.
You know, and that's why once they trusted us, and you know what it's like in business, trust is such an important part. So the partner, they don't want to give it to a partner who may put it onto their platform or may go and put it onto a competitor's. We were like, we're all in here.
Yeah.
And so that focus was what really over the years, again, created our fame to the sale point.
You know what's really interesting is that, because I've been talking about this topic with my clients, but also on what happens next. I think as independent creative people, we sometimes turn around and go, we don't need structure. We want to be free spirits. We want to do things our way. But what I've learned in my own life with clients, you know, and talking with a number of experts for what happens next, is actually the right structure and framework in our business, but also in our lives, is really important. How much of a part did structure and framework play, not only in the business, but also in the way you looked at life?
Yeah, it was that rigor of just keep on doing simple stuff.
Yeah,
if I'm honest.
Yeah.
You know, we can sometimes get bored with that. And then we then spend time and energy and uncertainty in trying to create something else. I mean, we spent years of like building websites and building our own e-commerce platforms when there was multiple other platforms that had already been created. And we were like, but ours is better. We're going to take the best of all of those and then create our own. And, you know, sometimes that works. They've got to work occasionally, but I think more fall by the wayside as not working. So when we went into this process at this period of, right, we want to run our business in a way.
Yeah.
That's which way we're going to take. And we took this one structure, this one system, you know, the EOS system, and we just followed it purely. And I think that the weekly meetings, the regular cadence, this is how we do it here approach, don't try and change it, just use all the bits of it with rigor, was what really helped to you know, drive us forward, if I'm honest about it.
And rigor is a really good word. I mean, I know that you stay fairly fit and you swim and you cycle and you do the runs. You know, we know what works to train for that sort of stuff, and you just got to do the work, haven't you? You just got to have that structure in place to, instead of turning around and going, you know what, I'm gonna skip 15 miles today. Do you know what I mean? It's that element. Although that would be worth watching.
Yeah, it's so easy to do that, isn't it? And yeah, I mean, I do it. I'm sure we all do it, don't we? That we're just a bit too busy doing that. But you know, that's the thing. If you know, for people to succeed, they've just got to go out and do the hard yards at times on a regular. But even when you don't want to put those trainers on and get out there in that weather, they're the ones that do pretty good, you know.
That framework of doing the weekly meetings can add a lot of work to you, but actually having that framework is really important. So you've been through your own what happens next journey, because you sold that business and then decided on the fact that you were going to become an EOS implementer. Talk me through that journey and why you decided this was going to be your next step.
Well, obviously, I got the fortunate position of selling Blue Leaf, my previous company, and then I was then sort of retained on through COVID as it happened. So I sold just before COVID, and you know, it was a very fortunate sale, being frank about it. And so I stayed on. I was you know, contracted for 3 years, and I did 4 as it happened. But you know, look, it was a strange time for everybody through that COVID period. You know, I had 2 kids in lockdown, so that was my lockdown project, which I'm still paying for a long time. Anyway,
that won't end anytime soon either. Let's be honest.
No, not when one of them's interested in horses. No, that's why I'm back to work. Well, that's my motivation there, Chris. No, I think what I found was I was working within that company, and you know, at first I was really excited and that was working well, but yeah, it got to the point where I really did lose focus and did lose purpose, if I'm perfectly frank about it. And it was only when I re-picked up the book that I realized, holy cow, this is exactly what I need to be doing, is to be an EOS implementer. And that's why I contacted the head office. They then sort of, they got me excited about it, which was really good. And yeah, I bought a franchise and that was it. I was absolutely infused about it. And now I just, you know, I get up and I'm passionate about it. I'm passionate about it. It's such a good thing to do.
And it's interesting because a lot of the people who get in touch about what happens next, and we speak to, because we're their financial planners, often the gap between selling your business and trying to find what's next is often about purpose. So tell me a bit about, you know, because I know that under the EOS banner, they do talk about values and purpose quite a lot. Talk to me about how you rediscovered that for you and how that looks.
Well, from a values point of view, as soon as I made contact with them and we went through they went through the values, it was like, that's me, that's me, that's me. Which is so important, because obviously if we're working with a bunch of people or anybody, if we're working with anyone, it's normally a values alignment that we like people with.
Sure.
You know, and if there is some sort of conflict in some shape or form, you know, we often look at it and think, well, actually their values are different than my values. And so based on that, if we have that in daily life, then it makes sense to really clarify those in our business, get clear on what those values are, and then only hire people that are like those. You know, it's so important. So we you know, from an EOS point of view, we do that. We get the values set up, we test them on sort of good people that we really like and work well with, and then we test them on people that haven't worked out throughout the business, you know, and it sort of really strengthens and shows which are the key values, especially when you link it with another part, which is called GWC, as we call it. Gets it? Do they get the role that they've got to do? Do they want it? And do they have the capacity? So if we find somebody in our, you know, in our company already, or to join our company, who meets our values, you know, we know we're going to sort of get on with them from that point. And if they get the role that they're coming in for and they want it, they're not just coming for a job, you know, and they've got the capacity, you know, the skills, the time, the knowledge, then boy, are those people really likely to work out pretty well within a business. So if we know that, that's what we look for.
And where would you clarify that? Would that be an interview stage or before, or how would you make sure that all of those things fitted?
Yeah, hiring. So when obviously CVs are coming in and we're checking on people and what they're saying, we're meeting with them, we're asking questions. We have built out a wiki of questions linked around our sort of values. We have not just the person interviewing, but anybody that was potentially going to speak with them. You know, they should be testing them. You know, it's what we call the people analyzer. We've got to test people throughout to make sure that they are right people to come and join our team. So yeah, but even then, once they've joined, we're then making sure that they're clear what the values are. We're then making sure that we're checking it in on a very regular basis, and effectively realigning. You know, if people are not quite there at the mark where we want them to be, just put a spotlight on it. Tell them what we're looking at. This is our expectations, and eventually, you know, they're either come up to that mark,
or they're not going to fit.
They're not going to fit.
Yeah.
But you've got to use them throughout the journey, not just hiring. You know, values are not just to go on the wall as a marketing campaign, job done. You know, we've got to use values throughout the whole life cycle of hiring people.
And it's interesting because I've worked in environments where larger corporate environments, Adrian, where the values were just on the wall, job done. And guess what? I feel demotivated by that, because actually I can see culturally that organisation didn't really believe in the things they say they did. And actually,
that's right.
Yeah, it's such an interesting one. But a lot of my conversations are with clients in their mid to late 50s to mid 60s. Thinking about the fact that they've invested so much time, effort, and energy in their business, and now they're looking for a bit more balance in their lives.
Yeah.
What are the component parts to get somebody's business ready for achieving that balance?
Accountability. I find that so often, as a founder or a leader of business, then, if they're stuck in it, it can sometimes be a hard place to try and get out of. You're probably working for the worst boss in the world who dictates that they work long hours for low money or whatever, but if they really want to try and move out of that day-to-day seat, we've got to figure out who's accountable for what.
Yeah.
And so one of the things which we teach and work on, and certainly work for me, because I was actually stuck. I was this founder. I started my business. I was in it and growing the business. But I found out that I was not the best guy to be fronting it, what we call the integrator. It might be the MD or COO. Because if you're in that seat, if you are a little bit flighty as a visionary who likes to read a lot of books, then come into the team and say, guys, look at this. This is great. Why don't we try this? And they're like, but we're doing this. You told us to do this.
Yeah.
Well, keep doing that, but look at this as well. And it just confuses them.
Yeah.
So we've got to make sure that if we are the sort of people that come up with 20 ideas, 19 might be crap, but one might take us to the moon. We need to get it filtered a little bit by somebody that can just hold the course a little bit, maybe an integrator, as we call it, the MD. And they're the ones that spin the plates. They're spinning the plates with what we've got to do and when we've got to do it. They manage the plan. So based on that, we've got to get clear on the seats we need in our business, the functions, clear on the roles that we expect for each seat, what we expect to be done. And then we check to see if we've got somebody can sit in each seat. And once we get to that point, we can then, we've just got one set of eyes to look at to say that they're accountable for that function, that role.
Yeah.
And then that allows these, you referenced it, 50 to 60-year-olds, which suddenly I'm in that bracket, but it enables us to then start to think, okay, now let's just make sure that these plates are spinning with these people. They're accountable. They know, well, they've got to be accountable. Catch them doing the right thing, guide them on what's not right. And it may enable us to just move out of the way a little bit for people that are right, what we call right people in the right seats.
Yeah. And then I suppose, the point you raise is a fantastic one, because I'm the disruptor in my own business, which is embarrassing to say. I'm the one who comes in and goes, great, should we have a look at it? And they go, can we just do our job for our clients?
That's right.
Yeah, but it's so interesting, that tension between the guys who at Savello do an amazing job operating the business. And the skill set I hopefully bring in terms of challenging, but also growing the business. It's really, really interesting. But I suppose the other big thing, and we have this conversation quite a lot, particularly when I read Traction, is that accountability element. And certainly Traction's helped me become more accountable to my guys and making sure my team and making sure I'm adding value in terms of what I'm doing. But I've had plenty of conversations with the team where I said, well, okay, who's individually responsible for that? And Cassie will say to me, we all are. I went, nobody's responsible. Because if everybody's responsible, you can't manage that, can you, as a journey?
And just on there, Chris, actually, there is something I see it, two words differently. I see the accountability and responsible as two different things. My response links to responding.
Yeah.
Ultimately, one person needs to be accountable for it.
Yeah.
My kids are, they're young, 4 years, and we're building responsibility into them, and they're going to the side of the road and they're learning to take responsibility, but I'm still accountable to make sure that they're safe. I think, and something that and when there's multiple things, one of the things I demonstrate in a team who say, we're both accountable for this. I say, great. I throw the pen out and neither of them catch it. And then if I say, well, that's because nobody's accountable, right? But if we have one person that is accountable and then throw the pen out, they always catch it.
Yeah.
When there's multiple people, it just falls into a gap.
Yeah.
And so that's why we are very clear who is accountable.
Yeah. But I like the analogy you used there, Adrian, because again, we might have certain tasks that are completed in the business that aren't the person that's accountable, but they're actually responsible for it. So I think the differentiation is really, really important. But often with the clients we're looking at, they are looking at their well-being in a bit more of a broader sense. And actually, I have loads of conversations with clients who are not working for the money anymore. They're working for the satisfaction it gives them. But I'm really curious to understand, both through your own personal experience, but also from the experience you've had working with business owners, on the other elements of well-being and how that's an important part of your life. So I get that fitness and health and physical well-being is an important part. When we're looking after ourselves as business owners, what other elements of well-being do we need to consider when we're thinking about our lives and living it in a way that really works for us?
I think it's each to their own, to be fair, Chris. I mean, you know, there's no way there's one fits all in any of this, is there? We're all succumbed to reading all about the work-life balance and fitness and eating better. Now, you know, again, generalization, we're probably all doing a better job than maybe, you know, 10, 20 years ago we're doing, right? But I think it is all down to your own and your journey. I mean, I see some people just so driven, you know, at 30, 40, 50, 60. So it's not an age thing. I think it's just down to a mentality where, again, I see people cross that magical 50 line and then start winding down with it. So really hard to, in my mind, hard to sort of say what is the best. But for me personally, I do like to stay active. I do like to take what we call clarity breaks. You know, I get lots of, like you, Chris, doing your riding, and I love riding my bike. I love go windsurfing or to the weights or whatever. I that's where I get good ideas. You know, it just gets you thinking better.
Yeah, and I think you do you is a really good perspective. But I also think maintaining an element of intellectual curiosity.
Yes.
If that's work, great. But if that's some element of like trustee, charity trustee, or non-executive director, something to keep you mentally engaged, I think is.
Totally agree with that. Totally.
Yeah. So really good.
I mean, I think many of us are. We are sort of succumbed by what we call shiny pennies. You know, we're focusing on something, and then there's something over here. You know, AI. Oh, that's exciting. You know what? AI really excites me about it, and I'm really holding back from diving into it too much because I know that I'll get taken that way. But what I'm trying to do at the moment is just stay very masterful on EOS. I don't want to have lots of things going on. I'm interested in stuff, so I'm very keen on saving. A good a mentor of mine, a guy called Keith Cunningham, said, you know, shiny penny days, just save these ideas, put them into a mythical drawer, and then once a month I'm just going to play with my shiny pennies and see where it goes.
But here's the interesting thing, Adrian, and I've certainly been guilty of this and continue to. I've stopped calling myself an entrepreneur. I'm actually a business owner.
Yeah.
And I think the reason that I've stopped doing that is just a bit of a reframing in my own head.
Yeah.
Helps me turn around and go, look, let's get really practical on what generates the wealth in my life, in my business, in my client's life. It's doing the work.
Yeah.
And actually that entrepreneur, and again, you know, you could argue that it's purely linguistics and we're all going to have our own different definitions on that. That entrepreneur seems to ignore the fact that to run a successful business, you need to do what your clients actually pay you for.
Yeah, well, there is that. Yeah.
Not just have these brilliant ideas that are going to result in who knows.
Yeah, exactly.
Again, I think there's a tension between that element where you go, we need to innovate, we need to grow, we need to keep an eye on how these emerging technologies. No, I mean, AI is not emerging; it's here, isn't it? But
yeah, well, it's been back.
How we use that, but
Yes.
in a positive way to help ultimately the aim of the business, which for us is to help people live their lives with the money they've got.
Exactly. Yes.
So yeah, it's a real business, real balance, I think, but one that I same as you, I consider myself really lucky, and I'm certainly lucky to have these conversations and help people navigate them. The interesting thing, though, for some of our clients, particularly as they're in a position where they're thinking about their next stage, and like you, coming up to that period where part of their achievement to get financial independence or more financial security is going to be to sell their business. You mentioned that the EOS model can actually help companies get better valuations because companies that invest in business really like the EOS model. Tell me a bit about that.
Well, look, they don't want nasty skeletons. They want to know that they're buying something that's well run, don't they? I mean, think about it from the other viewpoint. If you're going to go and look at something and you can actively see some data in front of you, which is weekly scorecards going back as long as, they started. You can see weekly meetings where issues are raised and solved and 7-day actions, so, what are they going to think? They're going to look at it as opposed to when they come in and say, how do you run your meetings? Well, we do this. And how many have you solved in problems and stuff? Oh, it's just, it's as soon as, people look under the hood to look at a business, they just want to know if it's well run. And you've got the other aspect to that is it all dependent on a person? A front person or the founder, the owner, the visionary, whatever. If they can create the structure where they can see these regular meetings, these issues that's been solved, the quarterly rocks, as we call it, the big things we've got to do every quarter. It's a world of 90-day sprints that we set up for them. Then again, it adds value. I mean, we've got countless cases where companies have gone to market and got, higher multiples or, found more deals because of it, whereas previously they struggled. It helped us. They didn't buy us because we were on EOS, but when they looked under the hood, it's like, okay, that's a well-run business. That's what they're looking for.
And particularly in our world, professional services, the due diligence process you've got to go through, just getting organised for that super early makes sense, right? Just starting that process as early as you can makes sense.
Yes.
But I suppose the interesting thing, because we've followed Traction and we've done for quite a while. I'm a fan of the book. I bought all of my guys, all of my team, the what's Traction all about? The informal guide to Traction. So I've read that as well. But what's been interesting for me, Adrian, is that element of surprising benefits that I didn't expect, because I expected to use Traction to keep the business accountable. It's probably kept me accountable more than anybody else.
Brilliant.
Because I now need to turn up once a week and say, this is where I am with my rocks, and I can't turn up and not expect everybody to show progress without me showing progress. And that was, if I'm being perfectly frank, that was really unexpected. When you're working with businesses, what are the things, like they'll read the book and as you say, they'll turn around and go, that makes sense, but it seems a bit simplistic. Until you actually run it, you don't actually get some of those actual benefits. When you're working with businesses, what are the unexpected stuff that comes up?
Yeah, it's interesting you say that about yourself, Chris. I think that it comes back round to that word rigor. That if many times I find business owners and leaders, and again I'm generalizing here, but they're you might have a meeting at say 10 o'clock and they rush in at 10:05. Sorry guys, was on a call to a client and stuff like that. They're always sort of running a bit late. And what that does is it creates a culture of that's what we do. If we're creating this culture where the main person is sort of late or hurried or, using their phone in meetings, then that's the culture you create. And what that does is it sends the message from top down all the way through the organization. That now is your culture, that you're probably going to be late and you can have phones in meetings. So I think the thing which I call out on a regular basis is we start on time, we end on time, we have no phones in meetings, and we are very focused, because what we put up with and what we stand for in our sessions together, that will permeate through the whole organization. Now it's up to you. If you're happy with that, you're setting the course. That's fine, it's your company. But if you're not aware of it, then be aware of it, that everybody's gonna follow suit. It's a little bit Chinese whispers, isn't it? It just gets watered down as it goes through the whole organization, what you stand for. So I think this is why I love the rigor of, we have a meeting, a level 10 meeting, it's got to be scored so we can improve it. Hence why it's 10 out of 10 being the best. And we have that same time every week. And what we say is you can only miss it if you're on holiday or you're dead. Other than that, you should really be in that meeting. It's the most important meeting that you're going to have each week, because you're solving the biggest issues in the business to help you to go towards your weekly, your quarterly, your 1 year, your 3 year, your long term, whatever that looks like. So it's that.
And we've got and again, I'm using this as a bit of a personal coaching section with the help that if I share this, somebody else might benefit by the watching it. But our meetings always, not 8:30 on a Tuesday, we run our weekly meetings. It's been really useful. We've got no problem with starting on time. The challenge we've got is when we dig a bit deeper into some of the issues of the week, it can take a bit longer than we expect. Any tips on, like, if somebody's running traction and they're thinking about just getting it to that hour, isn't it, or half hour that you need to get to? What do you need to do to discuss the issues, or were you just highlighting the issues and then moving on? How would you work that weekly meeting?
Yeah, so without going into the whole agenda, but the first 25 minutes of a 90-minute meeting is focused on smoking out issues within the business. And then we draw a line under it. And now we're going to talk about the issues in a priority order. So we look at a list of issues. We pick the top 3, where are we going to go, just to make sure that we're not, talking about the Christmas party or who's bringing the milk to work. We pick about the biggest issues in the business first, and we spend as long as we need to. We allocate 60 minutes for IDSing, identify, discuss, and then solve. So if we've got 60 minutes, sometimes we might need that 60 minutes, but generally it means that you're probably getting a bit too deep in it, not getting enough actions from it to take away from the meeting.
The
meetings I watch and observe, people are sort of spending too much longer in either the discussion and going back into, or they haven't gone deep enough on the identify the root cause. So it's a case of identify what the issue is, discuss it with the aim to solve some ways of unlocking your position, going to the next level, something you can do in the next 7 days, so that person is then liberated to then get on with it. That's how we do it. Now, if there is a case where you feel that you need more time on stuff, then it's wise to check in with all the people in the meeting and say, look, we're due to finish here at, say, 10:30, and we're deep into this important issue. You are all okay if we overrun for, say, 15 minutes. If we do that, we need to let the people know outside of our meeting that we're going to overrun, because, again, that is showing respect to everybody who may be waiting for you, you know? So it's setting that tone, that culture of what we do here. we advise, we guide people. We always finish at 10:30 unless there is a big issue, and then we let people know we're clear on the direction of it.
Yeah, I love that. Talk to me about, so I'm sure like us at Savello, you work with many business owners who are thinking about what happens next in their lives. From a business, but also through your experience, when we're thinking about what happens next, what factors do you reckon we need to take into account?
Well, it's a big question, that, Chris, because there is so many different factors. But I guess if we're thinking about it from the context of the business, there is that what happens next. So what I'm seeing,
you know, what's interesting, and again, this is something I talk about quite a lot, both with my clients when I think about my own business and my own life. I had a really interesting meeting with somebody I've known for many years this morning, who assumed that the next route for us would be a MBO. So we'll just build a team and get so. Now, I don't know whether that's going to be the case or not. I like to think that will be certainly be one of the options on the table. But like, there's so many different factors to think about, isn't there, when we're thinking about that next step? When you're in conversation with your business owners and they're talking about that sort of stuff, what are they thinking about most?
Well, the thing I'm seeing more so is EOTs, employee-owned trusts.
Yeah.
Just because of the tax advantages for doing so are just so good. You know, I'm now part of the employee-owned association because I believe so much in it as a route, which also aligns in many ways to EOS, because obviously for people that don't know what an EOT or an employee-owned trust is, where you sell it, and you know this way better than me, Chris, but obviously selling the business to a trust, and then you get your money back over a longer period, whatever you determine, and it being tax-free, which is very nice. But in order to do that, you've definitely got to go back to what I said earlier about accountability. You've got to have the right people in the right seats who are accountable to drive and run the business to get the value out of it as you plan to. Yeah. So I am seeing more and more teams that are interested in this, especially as going up and up, to exit and leave that legacy, because I think there is a part of it where some of us do want to leave a, you know, not just get the best money today with a trade sale, which might knacker our culture, might put us through the mill, trying to, you know, chip away at us to the numbers and all that sort of stuff, and be a painful experience with no certainty in the journey that you're going through. So with an EOT, you control that whole process, the timings, the amount. So you control everything and maintain the culture of the company and therefore the legacy. But
the interesting thing about EOT, and I've helped clients who have had some really positive and negative experiences in the EOT space. I think the important point for me is EOTs, you need to make sure the business has got structure and process to make sure they're sustainable.
Absolutely.
And actually that element of having to wait 7 to 8 years for your profits, for the value of the business to come out, means that the structure and making sure that all those points are in play before you do your revenge or exit are really important. For anybody who wants to have a bit of a deeper dive on EOT, there's an interview we did on What Happens Next last year now with a guy called Chris Budd, who wrote a book on employee ownership trusts after he sold his financial planning business to an EOT. So certainly check that out. We'll put a link in the comments to make sure that you've got access to that. But yeah, 100%. There's huge tax benefits to doing it, but doing it without any structure is, you know, do not to go well, I think.
Totally agree. And yeah, you're absolutely right. It's not right for everybody, but neither is a trade sale, neither is an MBA. You know, we have all of these which could or could not work. So yes, you're absolutely right, Chris. This is why I see a good correlation between EOS, helping them to set the foundations up, make sure they can almost come out of it and the day-to-day of it being running, and then consider, well, actually, let's do this now to get the money out as well, you know?
Yeah. And what other, when you were thinking about your transition, what factors did you think about when you thought about your what happens next moment?
What, when I sold Blue Leaf at the time? Yeah. You know, it came earlier than I expected it to. I mean, it was a really bizarre period. It was around 2018, and never had it. I mean, I've been running my business, you know, 20 years, and then I started getting lots of calls and inquiries from companies wanting to buy us. And being fair, the EBITDA wasn't where I really wanted it to be. So, you know, we had 6 inquiries over about 6 months, all in a close proximity. And one of them was just really interested in the revenue, interested in the clients. And so a multiplier of revenue was a good deal for us.
Yeah.
So yeah, what happened next? Well, that was just, as I say, a little bit earlier. Than I'd sort of planned for, but it just felt right at the time. It was the right time, the right deal, and boy, was it the right time and right deal, because COVID would not have been fair to us. That would have really been a difficult.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was dare I say, a little bit of luck in that, Chris, rather than careful planning.
And it's interesting, isn't it? You've said it, and I say it quite a lot. The amount of yes, we can work hard, and hopefully we bring something in terms of skills and talents to the world. But let's not pretend that there's not a bit of fortunate circumstance involved, right?
Good luck, bad luck, it's out there, isn't it? You know, there's things we cannot control, so we've got to just control the controllables, as they say.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. We're doing a video series on what happens next in a minute, all about how we can use Stoic principles to plan best for our what happens next moment, and focusing on what we can control, but being grateful for the good fortune that we've had in our lives is really good for our well-being. Where can people find a little bit more about you, mate?
Adrian Lomas on LinkedIn. AdrianLomas.com is the website. Those 2 places you'll find me. If you want any help or advice, you want a copy of the book Traction, which got me out of the mire, then let me know. I'll send you one.
Fab, brilliant. And what's your one tip? If you could share one tip that business owners or people thinking about what happens next in their life could use today, practically today, what would it be?
Have a rigor of a really good system, not just the EOS, it can be any system. Just get a system that can help you to run your business, your life, or whatever, and just have the rigor of staying strong with that system.
Do the work. Yeah, I love it. Thank you for today, mate. Really enjoyed it.